Welcome back to Drive Life Thoughts. Tonight we're going to talk about the impact of relationships on children and how when you separate or you have a family member pass or something happens where there's a shift in a child's life. I mean, it can be something as simple as moving from parent to grandparent. Somebody different watching them on a permanent basis, and the effects that it has on them. This is strictly coming from a position of observing my own children through situations that I have been in, that my children unfortunately have gotten caught up in. So this is in no way, shape, or form a solid medical. I'm not a behavioral therapist. I have no degree in behavior. I'm just simply looking at what happens to the kids and how we can possibly make these things better. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with the effects of something like, the first thing that comes to mind is divorce. Divorce is obviously a terrible thing, or the greatest thing, depending on the situation. Oh, goddamn phone. Depending on the situation that you're in. So, how does that affect the kids? Well, first of all, if you're going through a terrible time where your parents are fighting and the kids are observing these things, they're little sponges, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're older or younger kids. Okay, when I'm talking about children, I'm talking 17 down. Okay, I'm not talking about 18 through adult. Okay, that's a whole nother topic. We're talking ages 16 down, and then I would even go as far as breaking the bracket down from 10 years old down to infant. So with younger kids, let's say the 0 or the newborn to 10, they're like little sponges, and they pick up everything that happens. And when you have parents that are yelling at each other, or they're just disrespectful to each other, the kids pick up on this and they learn these things. And this is pre-divorce, right? We're talking about you're already in the relationship. The relationship is obviously kind of going downhill. Neither parent is taking the time to, own up to their mistakes and maybe prevent any of this from happening. Now remember, hindsight's 50-50. So if you're already past this point, you've already went down these roads and you're like, that's obvious, this isn't for you. This is for people that are going through the steps before you divorce. If you really care about your partner and you want to prevent damage on a global scale, you want to try and work it out if you really care for them. If you don't, or if you're in an abusive or toxic situation, absolutely divorce is the best thing, and then you do what you can to cushion the blow for any children involved. So the other part of this is that it's not just biological children to you that are affected. Let's say that after the divorce, or if you're in a blended household, you have other children involved. You have a stepmom or stepfather in the figure, and in the picture, sorry. And it's the same situation. They don't get along, they argue. Now you have children with different parents that are very confused as to what's going on, and it hurts them badly. It creates insecurities in them. Why is mom crying? Why is stepmom crying? Why is daddy so upset? Why does the stepdad leave the home? Why can't they get along? And they absorb that and they take that in. And ultimately, those little ones, they hold on to this. They don't forget. It's not something that's like they remember every ounce of every memory that happens. Obviously not. We don't remember it. I mean, they do remember, probably some major fights if you're stupid enough to do these things in front of your kids. But ultimately, they see, because remember, children have very clear minds. They don't have jaded experiences yet. So anything that you do that's negative, it's the first terrible experience they have. Look, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I used to get very, very upset with my son. Okay, very upset. And I would yell, and I would think it would help. And sometimes, in the moment, depending on what it is, I still think that it's okay. But at the time, I was having a lot of problems with some outside things, and it's no excuse, but sometimes you let those things build up, and instead of working on yourself and remembering, hey, there's more than you involved here. Junior also needs to, he needs to be talked to on a lower level. And if there's anything I've learned over the past, honestly, 6 months to a year, it's better to slow everything down, get right down on his level, and say, this is what's happening, and be totally truthful to your children, okay? Or to your stepchildren, or to whoever, whatever the situation may be, okay? This applies to, like I said, it's 0 to 10, okay? So, anyways, they take it up like sponges, and what concerns me, besides the fact that I refuse to buy a mount, I was going to buy a mount, I don't think I'm going to, but what I think what happens, and what I've seen, at least, and I'm going to use my own, I remember times when my parents argued and fought, and they had moments of disrespect. There's no angel parents. I'm sorry, but even if you do your best to keep it away from your kids, they're not stupid. They figure it out. They know. And depending on the amount or the condition or what the events may be, and what the kids hear and see, this sticks with them. It's kind of like an imprint. And as they get older into adults, these events and these situations from when you're young actually will affect you when you're older. Now, me, I was very fortunate. I didn't have to see too many things. I wasn't brought up in a terrible home. I was very lucky to stay in the same place for most of my existence when I was in school. But even with me having such a good base, there's still things that I know that can happen. So it's hard for me to even grasp somebody that's home to home, abusive families, trying to, watching, domestic violence or drug abuse or things like that. That all affects your children. So you don't want to see your kids struggle later on. So the goal is to try and minimize the damages that you do now. And I've made mistakes. I've made many, many mistakes when it comes to this, and I've been doing a lot of work to try and make it so that your kids don't have daggers in their back and scars from things that are out of their control. Adults make life situations become children's situations, and we have to learn that there's a barrier there. You can't let the outside stresses of life, like let's say you don't get along with one of the step parents or one of the parents, okay? You don't get along with them, and there's a problem there. You have to keep that away from the kids, and everything needs to be in a positive spin, okay? It should always be positive. And besides, when you're with someone that you love, it doesn't matter what that other person's doing. As long as the kids are okay and the relationship between you two is fine, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what the other person does or how they try to interject. You just shield it away. And if you're alone and you don't have a partner and you've got kids and you're still having issues, shield that away. You can do it just the same. You don't need that. And honestly, it's probably easier to shield it from yourself than it is from you and a partner, because I've found that to fail as well. But moving on. So now let's talk about the older kids. Now, I do not have a ton of experience here. I simply am going off of what I have seen in other relationships that have potentially crumbled and what happens to those kids. When I'm talking about kids, I'm referring to the 11-year-old up to 17. They tend to get very angry, which is something that, younger kids, they just kind of accept it, and they're just like, okay, this is the way life is, because they don't know any better. But by the time you hit 11 years old, you've been around the block a little bit in school. You've seen what happens with other kids. You see that, some parents are together. Then there's other situations where you see those kids and they have other step parents, or they're single moms or single dads, and we don't know why. It kind of turns messy for those kids. So if you have a relationship that's on its way to be dissolving, or it has dissolved, or you're already past the point of dissolved and now you're just trying to survive, it's good to really talk with your kids. And I'm saying this from a father point of view. I'm not saying this as a hey, I'm trying to educate you by thinking I'm smarter than you. I'm not. That's not at all what's happening here. What I'm telling you is, as a father who is very concerned for the welfare of his own children, even if the kids are older, they see all this. Put yourself in their shoes. Think about walking down the hall as an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, even a 13, 14-year-old, and your perfect life that you had with your parents, even though things weren't great, you still had everybody there. Now all of a sudden there's a shift. You hold on to that, whether it's a parent dies, or they separate, or even more confusing to a kid is if parents split up and then get back together. It seems exciting until the parents start fighting again and dissolve again. What do you think that does to the kids? So I think it's very important that you be honest and upfront with kids. Don't lie to kids, because then they won't trust you. Kids are smarter than you think, and if you're honest and upfront, you'll have a much more respect given between you and the children. Don't lie to them. That is. Don't fib to them. You don't necessarily need to tell them all the bloody details, but being honest and upfront, I think, will make them respect you more, and they'll be more in tune to the situation instead of something happened. Okay, so that's kind of all I have to say for that particular age group. I mean, they're adaptive. They kind of learn and they lean on the parent, but those kids tend to, depending on the situation, and hopefully there's no intervention by parents trying to be manipulative, but you can put kids against parents. You can manipulate your child and say, well, your mom is terrible and she did this and this and this and this, which is something you should never do. Your kids should love both parents equally. Okay, if they make their own opinions because of things on their own, that's up to them. But you should not be the parent who's saying, your father is terrible and your father's a drunk, and you don't slam the parent, because the kids still love the dad or the mom. Even if they're in the wrong, you should still foster a positive atmosphere for those kids. It can be extremely hard on children when you have mother that they love, and I'm not just it can go either way, either gender, but the mother and the mother says, well, the father's a worthless piece of crap, or the father says, well, your mother went out and hooked up with so and so, and that was it, and that was more important than the relationship, and the kids still love both parents. So downing that, it just damages. It doesn't just damage the link between the kids and the parents, it damages the kids themselves. And people don't recognize that. They're only looking at this level. They're looking between, here's the parent and the kids are down here. I realize you can't see with the dashboard, but the kids are down here and the parents are up here. And the parents are too busy looking at each other to see the damage that's happening. All of everything up here is raining down on the kids indirectly. And then those kids have to sit there and make their own thoughts, and they're not old enough to know. They don't have any life experiences to know any different. Especially the younger ones. The younger's like, well, dad drinks all the time, or mom drinks all the time, or they think it's familiar behavior. So what I'm alluding to, and I'm going to wrap it up, but it's trying to make sure that you preserve the focus should be on the kids. Now, in a relationship, and I'm probably going to get shit on for this, when you're in a relationship that is healthy and you have kids or stepkids. Now, I've been in a situation where I've had two Steppish children, we're going to call them Steppish, and they were great. And then I had my own 2 children, which were great, and it was amazing. And it stressed me out a little bit because 4 young kids was a lot. But in retrospect, if I would have done a little more work ahead of time and had a little more patience and learned a little bit more and had a little more understanding, I think I could have managed it a little bit better. And any of the mistakes that I made were probably picked up by them. So you have to make sure you do your work ahead of time. You shouldn't be waiting for the situation to get bad to be like, hey, maybe I should, let's learn about the effects of all of this crap that's already happened to my kids. No, we should try to prevent any event from getting to the point where we have to worry about the kids' welfare, because the kids' welfare should be good. And that's something that's, I think, overlooked. I do believe that while we had the kids and while, the 2 parental units, if the parental unit is not strong, everything falls, okay? The kids are not more important than the parents. They're not. And people will fight me on it, and they'll say, well, no, the children are the future. They're the future, man. What are we going to do with it if we didn't have any kids? I don't know. I'd save a hell of a lot of money if I didn't have kids. Maybe my stress level would go down if I didn't have kids. But I digress. The point is, it's great to have kids, but the parents have to be a strong unit, and they have to have empathy, and they have to understand each other. Not the kids. No, the kids are lucky that they get the parents or the mom and stepdad or stepdad, mom, or did I just say that twice? I don't know. I might have just said that backwards. This is the problem of driving and trying to talk. I didn't say the channel was perfect, so get off my back. But yeah, so like when you have those pieces to it, I firmly believe that maybe, if you get anything out of this video, maybe if you're starting to see struggles at home, or you just want to make sure that, you're doing the best for your kids, maybe it's not a bad idea if there's pain and tension and struggle at the house, maybe just sit down and listen. You don't need to tell them anything. Just let them feed you information. Create a calm atmosphere for them where they can relax and it's safe for them, and just say, hey, look, if there's anything you want to talk about, or there's something that happened, or something between mom and dad or step parents, or some event that happened, talk them through it. Because ultimately those kids are going to become parents, and you want those kids, you want your grandkids to have really good parents that will think ahead and not be reactive but be proactive. This has been another wonderful cruise on Drive Life Thoughts. If you have any comments or any suggestions for anything you want to discuss, feel free to leave them in the comments. And obviously, because it's YouTube, you have to subscribe and ding the little bell. I don't know why, but people tell you to do it. So if you want to do that, I guess that'd be great. Have a good night.